Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Danvers Historical Society. We hope you enjoyed today's virtual speaker series. Please be sure to visit our website, www.danvershistory.org, to find out details about our upcoming virtual events and programs. We truly appreciate everyone's support, help, and teamwork in making these virtual events possible. We want to thank our speakers, DCAT, our volunteers, members, and trustees. We hope you enjoyed today's lecture. Thank you.
Welcome everyone. As you can see, we're going to do a little discussion tonight about the prehistory of Danvers before white men came and screwed it up, maybe, but changed things forever at least. But just going back, this is what this area looked like about 20,000 years ago. The Laurentine ice sheet in the Danvers, Massachusetts area was approximately 2 miles thick. So if you were standing here, right now you have a lot of ice on top of you. If you're standing on top of it looking east, you probably still would not be able to see the ocean, even though right now we're only about 2 miles from it, because the coastline was 400 miles further out because of all the water being tied up in that ice pack. So we don't know what's under there, but they keep finding mammoth bones and fishing nets. So if they were there, odds are people were there too. Work this machine, okay. This is giving a little information about what the fauna would have been, a flora would have been like during the Ice Age. You see the ice sheet up there. In our area right here, it was all tundra, no forest yet. And this was about 18,000 years ago. So that's where the mammoths would have been. If the humans were hunting them, that's where they'd have been too. Like it's off the coast, under 150 feet of water. Someday they're fair on the way to get down there, but so far they haven't. But you can see the whole shape of the coast, like Florida, so much bigger because the coast was so much further out. This is a map that was made in 1634. Oh, I forgot the microphone. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. This is a map made by William Woods in 1634, and Danvers is, Salem is right in this area. This is the names of some of the Indians that had the Indian sachems. James, I think John was down this area, and George was over here on the Salem neck. Just give you a little bit of history. This is again the coast drawn in 16, my things disappeared, about 1650. Again, doesn't really look like what we know it as, but this is their impression of the land. But just give a little timeline. In 1590, Squaw Sachem, who was the wife of Naumkeag, took over when she was born. She took over as sachem when he was killed, as I understand it, by the Tarantines or Micmac in a raid. Her 3 sons were, I'm going to kill these names, I know I am. Pawtucket, who became known as Sagamore George. He took over the Salem area, and the other 2 sons, Matuwakpete and Wanamakwakam, were the names of his 2 brothers, who each had a different area. Unfortunately, the 2 brothers died in the epidemic of smallpox shortly after the English came. And I don't have any inkling that the history tells us they did it intentionally. They just brought diseases with them unintentionally that the native people couldn't stand up to. George actually became known as No-Nose George because he was so disfigured by smallpox that he lost his nose. And he was actually captured during the King Philip's War and sold into slavery down in the Caribbean. after the King Philip's War in the 1660s. But it's been a contentious history, but just moving along as we go. This shows, again, this is the Danvers area right here. Shows the names of the tribes. This line here is a line between the Naumkeag to the south of it and the Agawam tribe to the north of it. So we're right on the line between the two. Just to get a little bit more detail. That shows the actual area with the names of the rivers, what the Native Americans called them, before they became known as the Duck, Crane, Porter, and Danvers rivers that we call them by now. They had other names during the colonial times, but those were the Native American names. Oops. Okay. All right, what are we doing here? Let's go. Oh, should I get that? Okay. Sorry. Back up. It's not going to let me. What I do, Laura? I think I get the pad. Well, anyway, this is a dot point on an Adelaide. You see the long spear point over there on the table on top of the piano? They would have thrown that with a throwing stick. Instead of throwing a spear by hand, you use the throwing stick, which you see just below it. You extend the reach of your arm by 18 inches, therefore more leverage, more distance on your throw. And they would hunt woolly mammoths and woolly rhinoceros and camels with those. And every fall we have an Adelaide Day up at the Rebecca Nurse House, usually the end of September, during trails and sales, and you can go up and try your hand at it, if you're so inclined. The button's still not working, I don't know what I did, Laura. Laura?
Yep.
I messed something up. Okay, there we go, okay. Okay. These are what are called clovis points. The older type of points where they were using those kind of dots when the man first allegedly came to this continent, they were using these points. They had a long flute down the center of them to make the spear thinner. We attach it. If you should find a point like this in your travels, let us know about it. You just found the holy grail of archaeology. Because there aren't many of them. We had the Bullbrook site up in Ipswich where they found thousands of points of this type going back about 10,000 years. And these other tools, gravers and scrapers and other tools that they would use, knife blades, just a single piece of flake with the edge sharpened. It's working good. Those are some examples of the throwing sticks. The example over there is one. These are other styles. You have a little hook on the end that goes into the end of the dart and use it to throw it. And that's an example of someone actually throwing one at our Adelaide event.
Hey, we know that person.
She doesn't want to do it though. This is an example of what a Native American village probably looked like. It was on the edge of a river, and you see the wigwams made of either bark, usually you use elm bark, stretched over a frame of poles that were stuck to the ground and bent over, and the smoke hole at the top. And here's one right here that doesn't have a siding on it yet. And very often, if you find a village, you'll find what they call mold holes in the ground, where the pole wood end of it has never been disturbed. The wood rotted away and leaves a shadow in the soil that you can tell was a lodge pole. I just did it again. Okay, this is the area where one of my sites is I'm going to be talking about. This is it more specifically. It was a village down in this area. I don't know if it was actually a village or a hunting camp. It's unfortunately a field that had been plowed for generations. So there's no stratigraphy, no sign of post holes from lodges, but we found an incredible amount of artifacts. Spear points, knife blades. I've got them up here if you want to look at them afterwards. The stuff on this side is all from that site. That's again just showing the site itself on a topo map. Doesn't tell you much. This is an unusual feature I found too. It's in the town forest. May have been a rock shelter. You've seen the cave dwellers that lived under the edge of a cliff that stuck out, and they block it off a little bit to cut down to the wind and build their fires and lived inside. You can just see the edge of what's left of the cave, if that's what it was, and this is all a pile of broken stone. So it may very well have broken off the top and collapsed. There may be something under there. Maybe someday someone would go in there and excavate it and see if maybe there's something. If it was a rock shelter, it could be even older than Bull Brook. We don't know. These are a few of the artifacts that came from my site. These are all knife blades. I say the knife blades because this, you see the size of them. This in the middle is a metric scale, which you always try to use if you have one handy. You have a reference on the points, on the blades of the artifacts. But these things would have been several inches long, never would have been used for a spear. They were too thin. And the other thing you look for, if they're not completely symmetrical, odds are they would have flown straight if you put them on a spear or something like that. This is something I did as a kid, not knowing that I was supposed to keep records, but wanting to keep track of where I found things so I have a better chance of looking for them in this old potato field. I actually made sketches of each one and numbered them, and then plotted it on a piece of paper. So I know, and this is the area I'm working in right now where I found most things back in the 80s, 60s, 70s, going down this way. But I kept track of it, and archaeologically, this is what you're supposed to do. As a 16-year-old, I had no clue that's what I was supposed to do. I feel if I knew where I found stuff, maybe I'd find more. Get lucky. Some more artifacts that came out of that site. These long, thin ones would have been lance blades, would have gone on an atlatl similar to that, a dot, I should say, similar to that. This piece just to the left of the card, we'll see a little later, another little piece of serendipity. A couple more balls. This is a thumb awl for making holes. This would have been used for something similar. This I was puzzled by, and I think I get better pictures of it. I couldn't figure out what it was, and then someone told me it's not Native American, it's actually a colonial slate pencil. But it was out there in the field. God knows how it got there, but the Native Americans were using it at some point, or it ended up there from some farmer. Another view of the same artifact. These are a couple of different dark points. Atlantic phase here, probably 4,000 years old. This one I think is a stark, which could be 6,000. No base in that, so you can't tell. This one, someone said they thought it might have been a bifurcate, which could be 8,000 years old or more, but I think it's just damaged. I don't think it was that old. This material, though, interestingly enough, comes from Marblehead. I'll show a picture later. Over on the shore of Marblehead, there's a big black boulder right on the coast called Castle Island, or Castle Rock, excuse me. The Native Americans used to go over there and mine material for making their tools and implements. You find a lot of them made of this black feldsite with the white flecks in it. Again, a few more points here, different styles. This one is a Neville, which probably is over 8,000 years old, and this is, looks like a Neville variant. Different types of points that came out of the site. A few more. Susquehanna Broad Point. I think that's a Susquehanna also. This one is a square base, and I should know the name of it, I can't remember it now. Couple of scrapers made of quartz. What they call, this one here especially, sugar quartz, because it looks like sugar that's lumped up. They very often worked in quartz. They thought it was a spiritual stone, and it was very, very difficult to work with, though, because it does not chip well. These are a few more modern points. This here is a Madison, which is probably just pre-contact. Same with this one. This one might be older, and this looks like a Dalton, which could be, again, 8,000 years old or more. So this site had quite an occupation over a long period of time. This piece up here is badly broken. It was a jack-leaf pentagonal with all the corners broken up, but look at the material it's made out of. I found, I said, oh my God, it's still got blood on it. No, it's that kind of stone it is. That material came from Pennsylvania. So either they were trading for material that far away, or it's possible that some Native American lost it in a raid when they were attacking the village. We don't know. But it's an unusual material for that particular area. The other pieces are all native rhyolites, which we expect to find in that area. This is an interesting piece. It's two pieces of what's called a banner stone. I should have put up a picture of one whole. It's called a whale tail banner stone because it's actually shaped like a whale's tail. Would have been about this long if it were whole. There's a hole through the center of it, which you'll see in the next picture. See the hole drilled through there. They drilled that with a reed and sand, spinning it by hand with a bow drill. And that's how they made the hole. And if you notice the end, it broke just before he finished drilling it. The Indian must have been a little peeved when that happened.
I always say that's archaeological evidence of a swear word.
A professional asked me how far apart were the two pieces you found. I said, I don't know because I'm not sure. I didn't record the first one, but you'll want to, like I am, how still were they really? I don't know. I haven't found the other half yet though, so God knows where that ended up. Again, just some debitage or half-worked pieces that come out of that site. Again, the same types of material. Some have been just blanched that they cut down to a certain amount so they didn't have to carry a whole huge rock with them back from the collection area, and then they finished trimming it later. These are a couple of pieces they found, two different halves of a piece at two different times. This one was actually in three pieces. And every once in a while I get lucky and find something like that, and there it is put together. Fit perfect. Another one, that was an interesting piece, and I've got it here someplace. I found this piece of it 30 years ago. It was in my box of scrap. And about a year and a half ago, I found this piece, and I looked at it. I looked at the triangular cross section. I said, no way. Went and dug out the box of scrap and dug through it. It fit together perfectly. Apparently, he was trying to thin it down, and he kept getting this knob or stack on it. When you chip a piece, you want the flake to go all the way across and get it thin. He could not get rid of this. He tried from several angles, and finally it broke in half on us. We chucked it. And I found it, like I said, 30 years apart. That's why one part is still brown, and the other is baked from being in the attic 30 years. A couple of hammer stones that they would have used for chipping the tools. A couple of pieces of what is called Onondaga chip, which comes from New York, upstate New York, not local. So again, shows that they were trading, not something lost in the rain because they were chipping the things here. These are the flakes that come off when they're chipping the stone tool. Now that's another picture of that Onondaga chip. This is an interesting piece. I've got it over here. Nobody seems to know just what it is. We've got a couple of views of it, a side view, front view. You see it's polished there. We're around the edge. Another polish there, or groove, I should say, another one there. And then the bottom was, and top were both broken off. Can't tell what it was, but somebody obviously went to quite a bit of work to shape that. And whether it was a figure of an animal as a fetish or a good luck charm, we don't know. I've shown it to several Native Americans to see if they might have some clue, and nobody's hazarded a guess yet. This is another piece, another side view of it, I think. I believe it was a hoe. You can see a groove here, the other one here. They don't really show in the picture that well. The groove would be right there. Let's look at it from the side. Kind of a humpback piece. I think it may have been used as a digging tool for agriculture, like a hoe, for making your holes to put seed into. This, I'm calling a Swiss Army knife of the American continent. This spot up here was ground out. It would have been used, I think, for smoothing shafts or a bow or any other wood piece you were using. Right here, there's a hole, which I think is in the next picture. Oh, that's there's the groove at the top. Would have been good for smoothing your shafts. And there's the hole at the bottom, you see right there. And I told you they used a hollow reed to grind out those holes with sand. You can see just a little teat sticking out there in the center of it, where the hollow reed went in around it. But that probably would have been used for the top if you're using a bow drill or a tool for starting a fire. That's a piece you would have held on the top to hold it still. It probably had all these too, but again, not a native piece of flint. This looks more like something that would have come from Europe. Might have been a piece of ballast stone that came from a French or Dutch or German vessel that the Native Americans got into their hands and used the flint chips beautifully from over there, better than the native stuff that we get. Or it might have been from somewhere else in the country, but again, not something that would have been native around here. Again, that's just another view of the area. This is the area where I'm working right here, currently. There's that dead spot on the list I had before. What I'm doing, because this is a plowed field, and the plow zone is completely disturbed, I'm going in with a backhoe, which makes archaeologists cringe, but scraping off the top layer, sifting it, and then going in with a hoe and looking for anomalies below the plow there. In this case, this field was very, very gravelly, very bony gravel. This spot is a positive clay and little flecks of charcoal in it. So as soon as I saw that, I stopped and I called in a couple of professionals. And we took it off centimeter by centimeter, found nothing. It just petered out after another couple of inches, few little pieces of charcoal. We were hoping to find a cooking fire pit, which would have been lined with stones at the bottom, is the way they normally did their cooking. But it unfortunately didn't pan out. These are a few other artifacts that were found by the farmers who found this field before I started collecting there. It started, I was out there one day digging potatoes with them, because their son was going to school with me, so I'm going to have fun digging potatoes. One of the farmers said, "Hey Dave, come here." We put a rock in my hand. "What's this?" He says, "An arrowhead." Well, it wasn't. It was actually a broken knife, but I was hooked. The rest of my summer was out there every spare minute I had, picking up little bits and pieces of junk, as my mother called it. But I got a good collection out of it and some good history. These are some of the other artifacts he had. This piece, I think, is just a stone that's eroded. We see that very often from the glacial action. And this one here, I'm not sure. A couple of points there. Nothing spectacular, unfortunately. This piece down here was a whetstone. Very well could be the type a farmer would use for sharpening his scythe. You still get them in the hardware store. And again, nothing else really spectacular here, but again, another quartz, couple of more quartz points. This piece, no idea what it is. I think it's just an erratic or a rock, but unusual shape. This was a site a little farther away from, this is on the edge of a cemetery. We were digging a grave one day, you see this black layer around the bottom. It was all wood ash. We found several graves in the same area that were found the same thing. I took some samples of it, and they determined that there probably had been a major forest fire about 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. It all was soot and ash washed down to the bottom of this pond and settled there, and then soil filtered up over it. Remember that, what I told you we're gonna talk about later? There it is, and there's the other half I just found last summer. And there it is back together. Some kind of a knife blade or a drill, but you can see it's almost 4 inches long. And it's in here somewhere, yeah, right here, if you want to look at it afterwards. A broken base from an Atlantic style point. Again, you date them and tell the style by the base. Just some more odds and ends of pieces. There's that 3-piece broken one I had. Again, just pieces of stone that had been worked a little bit. One morning I drove by my site and I looked at the morning mist. I said, 2,000 years ago, there could have been the smoke from cooking fires. Sent a chill down my spine, but anyway. Now we're going to go over to Danvers Port. Everybody knows where Kmart is. This used to be the Russell Farm. Here's Endicott Street here. That's Clinton Ave. This was a Russell Farm here. It's now all paved over. Lenny Russell plowed with a team of horses. So he was walking behind the plow. Every time one popped up, he could see it. He'd bend down and put it in his pocket. That collection is over there on the piano, part of it. I found it on eBay. A local dealer had got it from the family. I don't know what he paid for it, but I spent almost $6,000 to keep it in Danvers. Some incredible material there, hundreds of artifacts altogether. A lot of gouges, points. Here's a couple of the gouges here. This is hollowed, or this is side hollowed. The side is flat, and again, concave at the bottom. They were used for cutting, digging out a dugout canoe. They would take a log, build a fire on top of it to soften the wood, then dig it out with these, start another fire, soften some more, dig out some more. And they'd probably spend a week, maybe more, making one of these dugout canoes. These are the type of tools they use for it. There's another one, you can see it's concave at the top, cutting edge here. And these cutting edges were polished. I won't say they're as sharp as your knife blade, but they had a damn good edge. You can see it right there, how fine that edge is. And it was all done by grinding and polishing with another stone. This is an unusual piece. It's over on the piano, a grinding tool. The bottom of it is perfectly flat and polished, but they're probably using it on top of a stone to grind corn or whatever other grain they may have had they were using. Some of the points that came out of that site, again, one of those Madison War points at the bottom here. They were made barbed, so if you shot your enemy, it would be difficult to pull the arrow back out. The ones they used for hunting did not have a barb because they wanted to be able to get the point back out and use it to kill the next animal. But the war points always had barbs on them. Yeah, look, for some reason I won't get a quarter of the picture, but these are some of the other artifacts here. This is a gouge. It was kind of beat up, probably got hit by the plow too many times. Another collection of the points from that area. You see the variety of different types that were there. So again, a good long period. Some of the more modern ones here and the old ones up here. Another piece made out of quartz. And these are not lining up well. I don't think I can print that from here. Another small gouge. This is the cutting edge here. A plummet. It would have been on a fishing net probably, or maybe a fishing line, but more than likely a net is something that heavy to hold the net down until they went to harvest their fish. This is a rather unusual piece that you don't see around too often. This was a corn grinding station made out of a hollowed log. It's in a private collection. When the family came to the dams there in 1640, their tradition is that they found it on their farm and perhaps supposedly even used it to grind corn themselves. It stands about 2 feet high. It's about a little over a foot wide. I think it's American elm from the grain of the wood. I think there's a picture. There's another shot of it, okay. They sawed it off. The little powder post beetle damage, but it's in incredible shape for something that's almost 400 years old. Thank God it was preserved. And I think this next looks down into it. And the bowl in it was about probably a foot deep. And they would use a stone pestle. I don't have any of those out here today. And I think I can picture them, though. Long, round piece of stone that they would pound the corn with. And sometimes they actually tied it onto a branch of a small tree. So they pull it down and let the branch pull it back up. A lot less work that way. Okay, over here on this collection, a couple pieces. This one again is Onondaga chert, New York variety. This piece is called Vinyl Haven flint or chert, which come from Vinyl Haven, Maine, which is an island off the coast. And again, whether they were traveling that far to get this material or whether they were trading for it, hard to say. But it wasn't all local material. These two, in fact, were called cash blades, because when you go to the place you're collecting your rock, usually you find rocks like this big. You don't want to be carrying a dozen of those home with you. So they start to render it down to get it down a smaller piece, which, let me show it for you. That's a cash blade. It's not a point yet. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, about 7 inches long. But then when they had time, they would go in and finish chipping it and make it into a finished tool. This is a hoe. The branch would have been tied on here. Usually you take a branch that has sort of a teeth on it and tie the T onto that so you get the blade at an angle to the, so it works just like a modern hoe. And they'd use that in their agricultural endeavors. This is a display we had here at the Tapley Hall, which had to be taken down when we were doing our renovations here. But it gives kind of a timeline of the different types of points. This over here, 10,000 years old, maybe older. Bifurcates just a little bit more recently. And then going through the different styles of points over to here, where we get to the Madisons, or Levana points. And just a little bit of definition of the different types of points and how old they were. For anybody who's really interested, I got some books up here that you can buy from the Mass Archaeological. They're expensive, but they're incredible for identifying points. If you're doing any serious kind of collecting, you might want to consider getting one. This, from the Society collection, also a nutting stone, right here in the middle. Slightly hollowed, so you put your nuts there and then crack them with another rock and not have to chase the pieces all over the place. These are the pestles I was talking about. And another one here that had a little knob on the head of it. Little decorative, maybe broke in half, unfortunately, but we got both halves. A couple of pieces of ceramic or pottery, and we'll see close-ups of that, but they did a lot of decoration on their ceramics. This is from an old article in the Danvers Historical Collections from a man named Knapp, K-N-A-P-P. And he found these all within 2 miles of Danvers Square, I believe down in the Endicott Street area, or somewhere along that area. This piece right here, I know I've seen in the collection, but I can't find it, so one of these days I will. Nobody knows what it is. Fishing weight here, a couple of points over here. Again, not sure what this is, some kind of a small axe that would groove so it'd be lashed onto a handle there. This piece, I have no clue. I'm hoping maybe someday I'll find an archaeologist saying, oh, I've seen one of those before. But so far, no one has. This is a steatite bowl. You all remember the sink your grandmother had in the basement made of soapstone? That's what's all called steatite. There were outcroppings of it several places around Massachusetts, and they would actually carve bowls out of it. Usually what they do is they find a boulder outcrop, and they carve it out upside down on the rock to get the outside shape. They get chiseled under, break it loose, and then carve out the inside. That one was it's not finished, but it was, that's probably about 13 inches across. It weighs about 20 pounds. And they hung on to these. If they cracked, they would tie it together with rawhide. Wet rawhide, which dries, it shrinks, and it will hold it together. And Knapp said he found a piece of that up by the Endicott Street Cemetery, which is another site, again, just off of where Russell had his farm. It's right now a hazardous site, hazardous waste site, where the federal government's supposed to be cleaning up. They went up there doing some archaeological work. I have not heard any report from them, but supposedly they have found some stuff, but people were finding stuff for generations. In fact, I've got a little point right here that I found in the cemetery. It was a stump hole where a tree had fallen down and looked at the bottom of the hole. There's a point laying right there, in Otter Creek, which is a fairly recent one. This next one was, I believe, granite. This one was not steatite. So I'm assuming some kind of a mortar pestle setup, because it's, again, quite heavy, but it was not steatite, it's actually granite. All right, this is showing some of the decoration on some of the potsherds. You see a little indentation they made around the rim, just to decorate it. Another one, I'm not sure how they did this, but they had some way of making lines and they decorate them. This would have been probably struck with a little paddle with twine tied around it, just to give a pattern on it. Again, not sure on this one. I thought I had another one. There were some others that they actually took a seashell and rocked it back and forth to make like a zigzag pattern all the way around it. And there was one that looked like they actually did with their fingernail. Just rows of fingernail marks all the way around it. So these are a couple more artifacts from that site. A gouge in the middle, 2 axes, and again, a handle would have been tied. Usually they take a branch, the green branch, wrap it around there, and then tie it. And that's, believe it or not, what they use to cut trees down with. And we have one here that is that long and weighs about 20 pounds. I wouldn't want to mess with the Native American that was wielding that. This is a strange looking thing, a groove here on the end that a handle probably wouldn't tie on. This whole thing was about 13 inches long. Some kind of an axe, I'm guessing, but exactly what it would have been used for is hard to say. A couple more gouges, a little sharp one that flat out and cutting edge up there on that one. This one is hollowed out here. You see the closer edge there, and then the sharpened edge down here. And a little groove there where it would be tied on to a handle. Is that the edge of it? That was the end of it, okay. So, basically, no matter where you look in Danvers, odds are you're going to find material. If there's water in the area and a flat ground, odds are Native Americans probably live there. All along the tidal rivers, they were known to be where Liberty Tree Mall is now used to be the Massachusett farm. I was just talking to Mark Massachusett today. He said his parents and grandparents found hundreds of artifacts up there. He's going to try and see if he can find out where they went. He said they even found cannonballs and paper musket cartridges out there. But all along the tidal river, anywhere there's water, that site I was working in the town, next to the town forest, right alongside a stream, not far from the Ipswich River. It's just amazing how much there is around if you know what you're looking for.
David,
Yes.
speaking of tidal areas, they're going to be putting a new building in at the Home for the Deaf, and
Yes.
I went to a lot of those meetings, and they said, oh, we're going to make sure that the sites can be looked at, but I just wonder how cautious they're going to be. Are they going to,
Well,
are you going to have any supervision over that, or any?
I don't know if I'll have it. I've got some input already. Going through, I looked up their map on their website, and you're probably going to see it from there, but there's their site right there with the edge of the river. And going back to that map I showed you earlier, right smack in the middle of it, it says Indian settlement, 1629, right where the Home for the Deaf is. When the early settlers moved into the family named Waters, that the Waters River was named after, said that there was a Native American village on the hill just above their house, and they used to go up and down and trade with each other. So we know that there was a Native American village there, and when the planning board gave them their permits, they made a condition that they would do a proper archaeological survey. And they have to go for an environmental impact report because they're getting federal funds for it, which also requires archaeological surveys. So hopefully, we've got a site here that may be important. And it's probably a spot that probably was never plowed, which is very important, because then you can see where things were just lately. You may find the lodge poles, you will see where the huts actually were, and you know, it's incredible when the white man came to this area, the Native Americans have been decimated by diseases brought over by the French fishermen earlier, and once they were weakened, the Micmac, or Tarantines as they called them, came down from the north and attacked them. So they welcomed the English who had these guns that would help protect them. And they never foresaw what was going to happen. They were basically overwhelmed. But one of the interesting things that has been noted is very often when the English came, they would find abandoned villages. But they weren't. They were the Native American summer home, because they moved from one camp to another depending on the season. So the English came and found all these empty lodges, and oh, there's a nice place to live, and they took it over, and the Native Americans came back and found people living in their houses, squatters, and couldn't do much about it. But, you know, they were here for thousands of years. We've got archaeological records going back 10,000 years that say they were here. But you got to remember, before 14,000 years we had those glaciers. Basically scraped everything off that was there before. They might have been here far longer, we don't know. If you drive up and down Route 1 through Danvers and Topsfield, up those hills, down this way, and you realize that they cut the tops off and pushed them down to the valleys so it wasn't quite so steep. But that's all glacial action. As the glaciers retreated at the end of the last ice age, they pushed forward in the winter, scrape up a pile of rock and rubble, and then they retreat. And then a couple years later, they push up not quite so far, leave another pile. So that's why you have all those steep hills. Those hills were so steep at one time, if you were driving a Model T, which had a fuel system that was gravity fed from a rear gas tank, you had to back up the hills. Because we tried to drive up, the car would stop out and wouldn't get gas. So you had to literally back up the hills. So gravity would push the fuel down to your engine. But I'm open to questions. I probably left you a lot of questions I hopefully will have answers to. I see one hand up out back. Go ahead, sir.
I've got a lot of things that I find walking around locally in Essex County, and they're effigies. They're of animals, complete animals, faces, story rocks, where they'll depict 3 or 4 faces and an animal on them. And some of the detail is just amazing. I don't see anything up there on display. Do you have any experience with story rocks or
I
effigies?
don't have any that I've found around here. I've seen such in other collections. I'd love to take a look at them sometime.
I've got a whole box
Yeah.
of some real gems.
Yeah, because those people were into art just as much as we were. I mean, they had a little tougher time surviving maybe, but they did enjoy the finer things in life. They weren't above carving something. Sometimes they took them as good luck charms.
What I think they are, a lot of them are story rocks where there'll be a bear head and 2 or 3 faces, and I think my opinion, my guess is that it's telling a story of a successful hunt.
Could very well be. Could very well be. I'd love to see them. Sir?
Dave, I worked a few years as a National Park Service at the Saugus Iron Works. And about 20 years ago, a gentleman came in with what looked like a hammerhead from rock. And we asked him where he found it. He found it in the water, the Saugus River, in the mud, right in his backyard.
Yeah.
He wanted to have it dated. So we sent it to Philadelphia, our regional headquarters. They dated it to 10,000 years. We got it back, he came in, we met with him, we asked if we could put it in a museum. He said no. He sold it on eBay for $50. That was an authentic, rock-hewn hammerhead of some kind. And it was dated, a number of people dated it, and it was all 10,000 over. And we found out that his house is about a mile down from the ironworks. Found out that was a big assembly area for the Indian tribes, especially a group called the Massachusett Indians, as a religious observance or something like that. So just to tell you, you're right about this whole place is full of stuff like that. But to have it sold on eBay was $50. It's a tragedy.
This collection I got on eBay, I got everything except one piece that I never thought would go as high as it did. And after that, I just started putting $1,000 stamps and everything to make sure I get it. I didn't pay that much for it, but you can put a bid in high if you want to. Yes.
Our family home is in North Andover, we just downsized here. But I have built still a farmhouse and used to, I know the property next to home. And I used to just garden here and find all these strange things. And this is one of the things, I feel like it's a tool that fits in my hand perfectly.
Probably is. I haven't taken a look at it.
Yeah.
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 After we finish the talk, I'll be happy to look at anything anybody's brought in. And we got stuff here if you want to look at, nothing to. Anyone else?
Do you think that the ceramics were local or traded?
I suspect they were mostly local. There may have been some trade in them, but ceramics were very fragile. They didn't travel well. So I suspect most of the ceramics probably were local. That's an interesting thing, though. My site, I didn't find a scrap of ceramic, which I find incredibly surprising, because I found arrowheads there that are definitely contact period just from the style. So they were there a long time. I should thought I would have found something, not a scrap of it. But down there in that site, there was a lot of ceramics. Mr. Hall here in the front row donated his collection from Boxford that his father collected, tons of ceramic. Usually it's very small scraps. You sit there like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to put them back together. You probably have like 20 jigsaw puzzles all thrown in the box together. It's fun. That's what I'm bringing.
You mentioned that the arrowheads had barbs on them. What is a barb?
Barbs, B-A-R-B.
They sharpen the edges.
See, you see this picture here? Those would be barbs on the backyards. But the ones I was talking about were the Levina points or Madisons, a triangular point with long barbs. So if you shot someone with it, it wouldn't pull out. Kind of like a fish hook, has a little barb on it, so it won't come out easily. Anyone else? Yes,
Have they found any burial ground or something similar to that?
on this map that I showed you early on, there was a burial ground listed over in Marblehead. Indian burial place. There probably are several around. I don't know that any in this area have actually been found. But it's not always easy to tell because our soil is so acidic. Nothing survives except stone. So if there are any bones in there, you're not going to find them. What you would often find if you had a burial site, the Native Americans would use red ochre, which is a kind of stone, almost looked like brick dust, but a little brighter red. And they would use that in their burial ceremonies. I'm not sure what the reason was, but if you ever find that in conjunction with points, you probably have a burial site. And you should call some proper authorities to look at it. Years ago, they used to dig up burial sites because they knew that's where they find the best artifacts. Because when they bury someone, they bury them with all his tools and maybe some offerings. And it's an unconscionable practice, but what we've done through our history over in Egypt with the Pharaoh's tombs and the Viking long houses or long burial mounds. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of our science comes from. But right now, there was a law passed. How long ago was NAGFRA passed?
1990s.
1990s, it's been a while. NAGFRA, Native American Graves Repatriation Act. Anything that came out of a Native American grave or that has religious significance is supposed to be returned to the tribes. Fortunately, we don't have anything here at the Society that would qualify. The other museum, the Mass Archaeological Robbins Museum in Middleborough, we've got one whole room that has been filled with, it's called the Room of Respect. And the materials that we think are NAGFRA sensitive have been put there until the tribes can come and collect them and repatriate them and probably rebury them in a ceremony. So we have become more sensitive to that, and God help me if I ever find a Native American site, burial site, but call the proper authorities if you do.
And that would include the medical examiner.
Yes, medical examiner too.
Don't
Yeah.
call an archaeologist. You
Yeah.
don't know if it's a real murder victim.
Yeah,
That's the thing no one ever thinks of.
That's the first person.
yeah. If you find what you think the human
It
remains,
could have been Whitey Bulger, we don't know.
probably not buried with arrowheads, though.
You never know, that
You
could
never
be a
know
way
what
to
they
get around
do.
it.
Yeah. But,
You guys are
yeah.
gonna learn how to get away with murder tonight.
Okay, any other questions?
David, just on that site up there, the homeless depot,
Yeah.
when do you see that archaeological survey?
I don't know, nothing has been filed with the state yet. I've been watching the MIPA, and Environmental Monitor is the magazine online that they advertise any environmental impact reports or applications for us in it, and nothing's been listed yet.
Because we behind up there, they had extended permit.
Yeah, they got a permit from the town of Danvers, and, but they had to do the environmental impact report before they could start anything. And they will have to do an archaeological survey as part of it. And we try to get a condition, I don't know if it'll hold or not, the state might overrule us, that any artifacts they find will come to its historical society. We're hoping the state doesn't overrule us, but they might. John, you had a question?
I just want to clarify that the burials that Massachusetts has an unmarked burial lot. So the responsibilities for non-Native American are with the state archaeologist over 100 years old. But if it's suspected to be a Native American, then they're under the jurisdiction of the Indian Affairs
Thank you.
Commission.
Yes?
I have a question about the steep goals. When you tell me all the big plan, which is very hard to tell, what would they use? Must have taken immense amount of
To carve it, I'm sure it did. It would have been all chipped up with stone tools. We have a collection. Yeah. We have a collection of tools that we just got from a steatite mine down at the Robbins. One of our members got contacted by an ex-member. He said, I've got this collection of stuff that I think it was his father had collected with field notes, thank God, with all the pieces of steatite, all the picks and tools that he would have used for mining it and then shaping it. But yeah, it was a tremendous amount of work to make one of those. And some of them were actually quite fancy.
Really?
Yes.
There was I'm from Andover, there was a steatite mine in Andover that was definitely, they found evidence of debitage that was Native American in origin. It's one of the softest rocks. It's funny that it's called a rock because some people feel that it's so soft.
Yeah.
So it's still difficult to carve, but as far as rock goes, I can't remember what it is on the hardness scale of 1 to 10, but it's down way below 5.
It is quite soft, yes. Yeah. And there's different types of steatite as well. Some of them are harder than others, depending a lot on the chemical makeup of the actual stone. It varies. Is there another hand up? Yes.
With your points, how do you tell if something is 4,000 or 8,000 or more modern?
Mostly by the style of the point. A lot of these points have been dated because they are found in conjunction with organic matter, like for example charcoal, that they can carbon date. And if they carbon date the remains of the campfire to 4,000 years old, they can guess reasonably accurately that any artifacts they found around it probably are from the same time period. And after a while, you just get these books are going to show in timelines as well. You get a timeline of what style of points were being made in what time period.
And what is the whale scale? What was it used for? You said they were cutting out the...
I did not get into that, did I? Okay, they originally called them banner stones because when they first found them, not knowing what they were, they said, well, maybe an Indian chief had one on the end of a stick as a banner of rank. So they became known as banner stones. And then someone said, well, maybe they used it as a weight on a throwing stick. But for someone to use something in the shape like a whale said, this is a weighted atlatl throwing stick. Piece of rock on it, just give a little extra weight, so when you swing it, just gives more power to your swing. But to have something tied on there you're going to whip by your ear, that's shaped like a whale's tail, is that wide? I don't think so. I don't think so. Another theory that has come up recently is that perhaps they used them for like a flywheel on a spinning tool, because the Native Americans did make cordage. They made twine, they used for fishing lines and the like. So they would have had a spinning tool, and if you have a round rock as a flywheel, or maybe something like that to be a little fancier, but you spin it, the rock would keep it spinning longer. So again, nobody really knows exactly what they were used for. There are a lot of different types of artifacts that we don't know. John?
Yeah, I think at some point too, they may have lost their functionality and became more of an artistic expression. You do find them in association with burials.
Yeah. Yes?
Is it what the steatite bowls were used for?
They were used, I believe, mostly for cooking. Could be used for almost anything, I suppose, but they would have been good for cooking because you could put it in a fire, close to the fire. My understanding is a lot of times they would heat their food by putting it in sometimes even a bark container, heating rocks in the fire and putting their red hot rock into the food to eat it. But this way you could actually put the pot right by the fire to heat the food. Anyone else? Yes?
It was often used, steatite holds the heat really well. And even in the colonial days, in Andover anyway, they would chop blocks of the steatite and turn them into foot warmers. So that, you know, when you're in your horse and carriage or you're at church for hours on end, you could put your feet on it and it would still be warm.
Yep, that would work, yep.
They stopped using steatite for bowls when another culture, I think it's called the Odina culture, came east from more towards the Midwest. They were forced by battle over in this area. I'm going to say 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Don't quote me on that time frame. And they brought pottery and decorated pottery with them. So that was the beginning of the institution of using clay to make pots rather than having to carve steatite.
It makes sense.
Do you any steatite bowls have burn marks on them, like ceramics that they use to put in the clay or have burn?
I don't remember having seen any, Lindsay or John, any experience with burn marks or scorch marks on the steatite bowls? I don't remember
Not
seeing
so much
them
on steatite, so it's obviously clay.
on clay very often, because clay, of course, was fired to harden it. In addition to whether it was used for cooking later or not, but I've never seen any on steatite now that you mention it. Yes?
In terms of these bowls and vessels and burn marks and whatnot, what were their methods of water treatment in the early days to make purified water safe to drink?
Actually,
Fever, et cetera?
they haven't gotten into the pollution that we have now, so they didn't need to.
Disagree, fever and giardia and everything else.
The water was a lot purer back then than it is now. Was it perfectly pure? Probably not. But your chances of getting pure water were a lot better 10,000 years ago than it is now.
And again, for most cultures in the past, you're not drinking straight water like we do and everything. It would be coming from things like soups or other ways that you're ingesting it. So it would come from sort
Maybe
of
boiled,
boiled it and stuff.
disinfected.
Well, they say you can get really fresh water from birch trees. Cut them, so.
Yeah.
that is always good.
And they have some alcohol stuff too. You know, alcohol.
Green beer.
What do you think they made the alcohol with?
It's corn.
Corn. So corn was made to this.
Yeah, corn is from the Americas. Yeah, so aren't potatoes, so aren't tomatoes. Most of your food that you think of as European is not actually. There's like, potatoes are American, are from the Americas. So you think
I think
Irish
it's South-
potato farms, potato.
South American.
Yeah.
Below
Same
the
thing with
Mexican
tomato.
states.
Tomato is not an English word. It comes from an Aztec word, mate, because there was no English word.
Well, we have up here too.
It-
North.
And then, same thing with squashes, beans. Yeah, corn, beans, and squash, they're the three sisters. is what
They
they're
would plant them together, plant the corn in the center, plant the beans around it to grow up the corn stalks, and then the squash around the outside to keep the weeds down. And they planted it in the mountains. It wasn't rows.
How do they get wild animals, like bears and cougars and mountain lions?
What was the question about?
They're villages, they make their villages, and I know in Africa they'll put a thorny,
There would be fences and stuff.
thorny fence around.
You know, but you gotta remember, most animals are smart enough to stay away from humans. There's enough for them to eat out in the woods without trying to attack something that's probably got a sharp stick. It can hurt them.
And in their cornfields and stuff, they would have platforms, and they would like throw rocks at like birds trying to eat the corn and stuff like that. You would send like a couple kids to hang out for a few hours. I mean, what else are they doing? Right?
Throw a rock.
Some of the early agriculturalists around here weren't truly agricultural, they were partly hunting for the as well.
It's interesting, just one second, some of the early discussions about what the coast looked like when they arrived. One explorer said there was forests for miles and miles, all you could see, And the next guy came along, and I was amazed how many cultivated fields he was seeing. So, you know, everybody had their own vision, or maybe depending what era they looked at. But by the time the Europeans came here, a lot of the east coast, along the coast, was cleared for agricultural fields. Not stripped like it is now, but there still were a lot of forests, but there was a lot of land under agriculture. Because that's what the people were using for food, as well as what they got from the rivers and from the woods. And another interesting thing too, Danvers River, down where the Holton Richmond School is, we have the Plains Park up behind it with ball fields. They filled that area about 1945 or 50. And I was told, and I've seen pictures, that there was mounds and mounds of shells, shell middens from Native Americans that they just covered over. A couple of us are going down there to see if there's anything left of it that might not have got covered, but it looked like they covered right down to the high water mark. But I've seen pictures from the turn of the century where you can see the rows of middens coming down to the water.
I've seen those in the south, they have oyster shells.
Yeah.
They said they were there for thousands of years, and they took half of it away, and it was still in there.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Maybe one or two more questions, and then maybe we can invite people
Sure.
to come up and.
Your question up back?
What, you said there were two tribes, the main tribes in this area, but if you go back, like, were there different tribes coming and going, like you said in Andover, you know, tribes came from the east?
Yeah, there were different tribes in different areas. As I showed in that early slide, south of the Danvers Peabody line, basically, pretty close to that line, was Naumkeag. They had Salem in the area south of it. North of that would have been the Agawams. Now, if you got farther north, you get into different tribes. They were all Pequot, Massachusett, and there's other names that I can't remember off the top of my head, but Micmac farther to the north, also known as the Tarantines, who were harassing the local tribes, trying to take over their area and steal their food. But it went on back then too. What it might have been 10,000 years ago, same people? Probably not. Probably different groups that call themselves by a different name. But what I've seen in many Native American cultures is the name they call themselves translated as the people. This is us, of Apache, of Comanche, of Sioux, Lakota. Meant the people. So they were all calling themselves us, and they were them. And you know, what the tribes were, or the nations, or groups going back before recorded history, it's hard to say. Without a time machine, we probably never will know. But a lot of questions that we're slowly digging out of the ground and trying to learn what we can from what we're finding. And another question?
You mentioned a net weight for fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other artifacts that related to fishing, or was it all sorts of nets and weavers?
There were some other net weights. Very often you find, I don't have it with me, a rock this big, has a groove all the way around it, that they tie a rope around and use that to weight down their fishing nets. Sometimes it'd be what they call a plumb bob, shaped like a pail with a knob at the top. That was the picture I had, and there is one over there that they tie a cord onto the top of it, again, to hold the net down.
No fish hooks?
No sign of any fish hooks. I don't know if you see all these pictures of flint fish hooks, I think they're all fakes. I don't think they ever made fish hooks out of
No, if they did, it would be
It's
more
all looks like a
Yeah.
They use bones.
Yeah,
They're
bones.
serrated bones.
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
in New England style.
And so, you know, there's story about gouges. You put a stick through a piece of bait, throw it in the water, fish is swallowed, and you pull the thing, the stick turns sideways, and you got it. There's a lot of different ways of hunting. They put in fish weirs, a bunch of stakes that form like a triangle, to get the fish that swim down there, then get down there, they can't find the hole to get back out again. And you go in and harvest the fish with nets or spears or whatever method.
The most famous one is,
I'm sorry, John?
the most famous one is the boiled fish.
Yeah.
Right on Austin,
Yeah. Well, they did the big dig they came across.
Station in downtown Boston.
There is an amazing amount of history about the people who were here for the last several millennia. Most of we don't even know anything about that. So we're still trying to learn. And any other questions?
Well, I think we will.
Thank you for spending time with the Danvers Historical Society. Please be sure to visit our website to donate at www.danvershistory.org. Have a nice day.